Now let's go for some options of designing lines, right? The first option is called 3D snap, right? So when you pick line, here you've got something called 3D snapping. What does 3D snapping do? So for example, let's just say I want to design a rod here, right? From the middle, I'll drag it up, and now what I want to do is, for example, design some lines or connect some lines as cables. I want to connect from the tip of the rod to the tip of those parts, as you see in the picture. These are somehow cables. Now, is this correct? No, you see that? We think it's all right, because all the lines, right, are being drawn only in the plane that was set. So if you really want to do something like this, we need to set the work planes one by one. No, there's a better option, and that's it, this 3D snapping, right? So when you activate 3D snapping, it does not focus on the work plane, and it only snaps on the objects. See how great it can be? So I just click on it, and then design. You see, it has nothing to do with the work plane anymore. See that? It's very useful for these kinds of situations. Remember that spline has no 3D snapping because, well, it's already 3D snapping itself, right? It works as a 3D snapping. A point. Let me set the ground as a work plane. Now, as long as your 3D snapping is on, right, you can't give it a length or an angle while designing a line, because what it says is actually you're about to snap the object, so angle and length does not mean anything. So the moment you are done with 3D snapping, inactivate it so that you can use length and angle. What's the sign that tells us 3D snapping is on or activated? What is it? Yes, these big points that appear show us that 3D snapping is on. The next point is about follow surface. So when you pick an spline, right, here you've got an option called follow surface. Now, when you activate follow surface, what does this do? Actually, it designs on the surface, as you can see. You see that? It works, or the designs are being done on the surfaces. What you need to be careful about is when you pick line, only your follow surface is activated when your 3D snapping is activated. As you see now, when I click on 3D snapping, this appears, and then I can design, for example, a straight line on our surfaces. Now, maybe it does not, maybe you don't find it useful, but it's good to know it. The next item is called make surface from closed loops, which is clear by the name. When you activate this, right, if your design finally ends up as a closed shape, it will transform it into a sheet or a plane. Now, when I pick it, let me activate my 3D snapping. I design it, then I cut it. You see, it's activated. I design it, and then I connect it. You see, yet it becomes a sheet. So finally, if your design ends up as a closed shape, it will be turned into a sheet. And of course, if you've already clicked on 3D snapping, you are capable of creating a closed sheet in space. You see that? Now it did not create, so I draw another one. Check it out. Let me do it here. because we've got many points here, it does not work properly. For example, let's say, let me turn off 3D snapping. So for example, I draw this here and then activate 3D snapping and connect. You see that? It turns into a 3D sheet. Well, we want to talk about something really important. While you're modeling in mass, we've got two kinds of lines. One of them is model line, the other one is reference line. And so far, without knowing them, we've been working with model line. But the point is, modeling in mass can be done with both model line and reference line. Now I want to tell you the differences these two have together. The first difference is in options of modeling. You see, if I use model line in order to design a circle, do you remember the options for modeling a circle? Yes, if I select it and then click on create, I will get these two forms, right? Now, if I do the same thing with reference line, if I design a circle and then select it and then click on create a form, it gives me a sheet as well, right? Or for example, in rectangle, let me design the model lines this side, right? So I design a rectangle with a reference line and I design a actually rectangle this side. As you see, when I click on create, I get a form. You see that even it looks differently. When I select this one and then click on create, I can get both a form and a sheet. Let's just remember that reference line and model line are capable of being turned into each other. If I select the same thing in properties, here we've got is reference line. We can inactivate it and it will become a model line, or opposite. If I select this and activate is reference line. So now I got two options and that's it. But the second difference, right, is a bit more important. Check this out. Well, in art and science practice, you will face this. I design an arc here. Let me create the question first. So I'm using model line, I'm create an arc, then I will go to east elevation or west and copy this line, rotate, copy activated, and I place it here, and that's it, for example. All right, see that? Now I want to connect these two and create a sheet. If I select these two and then click on create, I will face an error. Basically, when you have two lines that the two tips, the two heads are connected to each other, with model line, you will face an error. But if you design it with reference line, you will not face an error. So now a question, should I delete these and then design it with reference plane? No, I told you that they can be turned into each other. So if you select them and then click on if reference is a reference line, when they turn into reference line, they will be connected. So this is the second difference that can be so useful in modeling. But the third difference, which we will find so important in the future, let me design a circle on the left by using model, and on the right by using reference. So select, create form. Let me drag it up. This one I selected. Let me make them alike a bit more. Create. And the same thing. Now, I want to tell you two differences. The first one says, if you tap here, right, delete this and then delete this form, the lines will be deleted as well. But if you tap or even don't tap, and then delete it, the line won't be deleted. Let me do it again. This one, I tap, delete, the line will be deleted. Here, tap, delete, Or sometimes, like for example, this situation, I don't need to select it. As you see, I deleted, but the line won't be deleted. The other difference they have is that when you select this, you see the edit profile. When you select this, you see the edit profile when I use model. But when I select this one, I don't get the edit profile. Editing the forms that are created by reference is just by that reference line itself. So for example, if I change the radius of this, I can change the form, right? So keep the same thing. If I change the radius of this, what will happen? I select this, for example, and change the radius to 9, right? It won't look like that. It will look like this, right? This is so useful for creating patterns that when we want to control a form in height, we use reference line. And by changing the base, everything, all that form will be changed. And in the future, we will find it so useful. And the last thing is that when you, for example, use model to design a form, that line will enter the project. By reference line, it won't. Now, to see it simpler, for example, I designed a simple straight line using model and another one, of course, an arc using reference plane. Now, these two, for example, I just want to load them into the project. Let's see what happens. You see that? The line that we used model to design enters the project with mass, but reference does not. So we can say reference is better, but finally there's no answer. It depends on your need, whether you want your line to enter the project or not.